I'm Natalie Aldieri. I'm the Director of Immigration and New American Integration here at the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Thanks for joining the New Americans Task Force meeting today, where we'll be talking about updates on the professional licensing for foreign credentialed individuals, and then also about the Small Business Federal Loan Program. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Zi Minshao over at the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging to start us off.
Thank you so much, Nellie, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zeeman Sao, and I'm the CEO of the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging. We're so grateful to be partnering with the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and the Center for Immigrant and Integration for the New Americans Task Force. I want to go over today's agenda really quickly. So we'll start with some task force updates. Nellie will go over that. Following by Nellie's remarks, we'll hear from the Department of Professional Licensing, or DAPO. They will provide an overview of some licensing updates in terms of foreign degree credentialing and other things, followed by Antonella Parker with the Governor's Office, and specifically the USBCI, which stands for Small Business Federal Loan Program, is an influx of money that is coming down the federal government through the Governor's Office to support small businesses, especially those from minority and disadvantaged-owned businesses. And then we'll close that with discussions and some closing remarks. Natalie also wants me to just share, and this is in addition to what we'll be sharing with you today, about a experience that her and I was able to experience yesterday. The Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging was hosting a discussion about bridging and bonding with two of the most influential thought leaders in the nation, Dr. Arthur Brooks and Professor John Powell from UC Berkeley. These two individuals come from different opposite spectrums and philosophies, but that we were able to bring them together to really talk about the importance of bridging. And I think this is really important to us, and one of the reasons why I want to share with you as we work in this space of New American integration, and that oftentimes there is forces that are telling us about what divides us, and the seeing New Americans and immigrants and refugees as a threat to a community. And a couple of really important takeaways for us to think about as we begin to do this work is the importance for us to tell a different narrative. Many times the divisions is built on the fear mentality of newcomers coming into a community and taking away our jobs. And they propose a different theory, and that theory is to introduce a different narrative than the one that is presented. And this narrative is a narrative that focus on not the scarcity mentality, but the abundance mentality. And that we can paint a picture where not just immigrants, but everyone can succeed if we welcome them into the community. So I think it was really relevant to the work that we do and the importance of the work we do as the New Americans Task Force. In addition to the very practical things, is the importance of narrative and storytelling. And the more that we're able to help people understand the contributions of New Americans that are in the community today, the better we are as a society. So I just want to share those words and then pass it back to Natalie.
Zi, thank you so much for taking a moment to share a little bit about Professor Powell's visit and the events that you hosted. A huge shout out to the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging and the Division of Multicultural Affairs for bringing together so many individuals for these important conversations. And we all, have an important role to play when it comes to bridging, especially when it comes to new Americans. I wanted to highlight a resource that I actually just popped into my inbox from the Center for Othering and Belonging at UC Berkeley that the Professor John Powell runs, where it's a free webinar series where it's called Learn to Build a Bridge Where Everyone Belongs. I'll put the information in the chat and we'll follow up with it. But if you're interested in this work, there's a role for everybody to play. So please check out the work that they're doing and take some time to learn a little bit more. I wanted to take a moment to update and share some highlights on some work that we're doing here with the task force and some of the initiatives that are coming out of our center here at the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity as it relates to immigrant integration. I mentioned last time that we received a grant from USCIS. That's the Utah Citizenship Initiative. And we are going to be building out some resources on our website around citizenship preparation, which includes resources to study for the exam, but also assistance with filing the N-400 and the kind of legal component of applying for citizenship. And we're hoping to do more digital resources around the state for that preparation and that immigration assistance that we'll be able to provide through this grant. So I'll keep talking about it and providing some brief updates. We're just in a planning phase right now. We will be releasing an RFP for some local communities to participate in this work with us that you'll see before the end of the year. And if you'd like to learn more, please let us know. I think for those folks on the call who are already engaged in citizenship work, we've continued to have those conversations, and your interest is very much appreciated. And if there's any other new partners, please feel free to reach out. I also wanted to share that the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity recently updated their website. The whole business.utah.gov was updated, but that also includes the Utah Center for Immigration and Integration. I'll put a link to it in the chat, but it's also linked in the presentation. But we'll be able to provide a lot more kind of consistent resources on our website. And there is a section for the New Americans Task Force that links to talks about the purpose of the task force, what our goal is with the task force, how to join the New Americans Task Force. There's a button there where you can link to fill out a Google form. And that also has our report from 2022 on some of the recommendations that came forward that we're continuing to work on into this year. So please take a look there. It talks a lot about the task force, especially for folks who are new. We have 180 members and counting. We're continuing to recruit new members throughout the state. I'm really pleased that we're from northern Utah to southern Utah and many communities and counties in between. And so we're hoping to continue this great work together within the state of Utah. I did just put in a snapshot in terms of the task force members by industry. It's a good makeup of nonprofits, state and local government, businesses, education, ethnic organizations, so organizations that were representative of specific communities, faith-based communities, individuals, and some international folks who join us as well. The last thing I'll touch on is around skilled immigrant integration support. We are part of a program with World Education Services that's providing resources to businesses and on employer engagement around working with with skilled immigrants and how to integrate them into their workforce. So we're part of a cohort. We'll be putting together more resources as part of this cohort on how to integrate an immigrant workforce in some of the areas that that people can help to elevate within their businesses on working and welcoming an immigrant workforce, specifically around language access and contextualize ESL, how to streamline some of their recruitment processes, understanding work authorization, and so on. So more resources to come on that as we're moving through some of these different resources in the coming year. Next slide. With that, we have a few upcoming events. Some of you are part of our Asylum Seekers and Newcomers Network. This is organizations that are working with new arrivals. We have a meeting next week that will be focused on housing and education. Please join us. Click the QR code to register for that webinar. We're also partnering along with the Salt Lake Chamber with the State Business Executives Network, where they have a regional group of businesses who are interested in learning more about immigration and an immigrant workforce. We're hosting a webinar with them on November 28th. from 10 to 11 a.m. Registration links will be coming soon in the follow-up email. But for those of you who are part of the business community or are interested in working more with immigrant integration in the workforce, this will be a great webinar where Colorado will be joining us from their Office of Department of Labor and some of the resources that they've developed, along with the American Immigration Council, talking about the Office of New Americans Network across the country. And then we'll have a partner who will be talking about some of their contextualized ESL programs that they partner with on businesses. And then the last event that we have coming up is part of a series that we're partnering on with the Department of Commerce. It's called Global Talent Pathways. And this is around manufacturing. This is a manufacturing networking event where we're recruiting individuals with an engineering, electrician, or other type of skills that would be transferable to a manufacturing workforce, and hosting this event with UAMI, which is the Utah Association of Advanced Manufacturing and Materials Industry. I think I got the acronym right. But they have some employer members who are interested in learning more about working with an immigrant workforce. So we'll be hosting that here on December 4th at the World Trade Center. Again, registration links will be coming soon. We're just putting the final touches on some of the communications there. So last announcement, we're really excited about the city of Ogden and partners have launched a new citizenship pathway resource for community members that are in that area. It's a free 12-week citizenship class that includes study materials, childcare, legal support with filing N-400s, and then also some assistance with the for the citizenship application fee, which is huge. For those of you who don't know, filing for citizenship is an incredible investment and can cost over $700 per person. So Ogden and local partners have committed to investing in some of that resource for those individuals in the community. This is kind of a really great program that's being stood up, and more that we hope to see around the state. So if you're in that area, or you're familiar with individuals who are in that area, organizations, churches, faith-based communities, please share this flyer, and of course we'll attach it to our follow-up email around Ogden's new Citizenship Path program. If you have new initiatives or programs that you're running that you'd like for us to highlight on the task force, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would be happy to include a flyer and have people help us kind of amplify some of the resources that are existing within your local community. It's also a great way for others on the call to learn about some of the ideas that might spark some interest within their communities around the state as well. Okay, so those are all the announcements. Today, we're really pleased to have the Utah Department of Commerce, Alexander Bybee, who's with the Research and Policy Specialist with the Department of Commerce, and their DOPL department, the Division of Professional Licensing, is going to talk about some really great updates that they have that just came on board here that will help with the licensing for people who, as we know, the immigration process can be quite fluid, but he'll explain a little bit more in terms of some new eligibility or pathways that exist for that. And then Antonella Packard, who's with the Utah Small Business Credit Initiative, is going to talk about the initiative that they're running and what some of the resources are around access to capital for minority-owned businesses. And we'll talk more directly about immigrant-owned businesses as well. So we'll start off with Alexander. Feel free to share your screen and we'll hand the time over to you.
Well, great. Thank you so much. I'm excited to share my updates. Let's get my screen up and share. All right, great. So in case there are people who are unfamiliar with DOPL, I'll give just a very brief overview. The Division of Professional Licensing oversees the issuing and the investigations, the enforcement side of professional licensing, and that ranges anywhere from cosmetology to physicians and physical therapists to CPAs. So there's quite a few, there's hundreds of different license types that we regulate. And over the last several years, the state has been making great efforts to not only be more inclusive, but reduce barriers that qualified immigrants face when trying to get their professional licenses. Before talking about the changes to identity requirements, I also wanted to share the fun announcement that we have hired a new member of our team named Abigail. And so we anticipate that this is going to help us streamline the licensing process, and especially to provide an intake person, a more community-facing person. So we're really excited to have Abigail, and we anticipate that we'll be able to start licensing a lot more people than we were previously capable of. So let's start talking about the identity requirements. So feel free to read along with me. Previously, to qualify for a professional license, an applicant was required to demonstrate lawful presence and provide a social security number. So just to clarify, being lawfully present in the country is not synonymous with having work authorization. Requirement for licenses solely that you are here legally. There is an exception to demonstrating lawful presence, and that is if you provide a driver's license or state ID that has already verified your lawful presence. So if you have a real ID, then we don't check lawful presence. And so, the way that we check lawful presence is we ask for certain documents to run a process through USCIS called SafeCheck. And essentially, we put in like a birth date, name, a number, or some other combination of identifiers, and it'll tell us what your status, your immigration status is. So for those of you deeply involved in immigration and immigration law, you might be able to tell that if your requirement is that somebody be here lawfully, that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have a social security number. So we recognize that there were certain immigrant groups that couldn't apply because they didn't have a social security number, but they were here legally. So earlier this year, Senate Bill 36 added the underlined wording to our statute. So where it says the social security number is required, we now have the authority that says, or other satisfactory evidence of the applicant's identity permitted under rule. And so my supervisor and a few others spent some time drafting that administrative rule. And here is essentially how the rule lays out. Alternatives to a social security number include the ITIN, the individual taxpayer identification number, or an alien registration number or A number, or for people who are currently residing outside of the United States and have never been issued a social ITIN or A number, an official government issued passport, and an intent to hire letter from a Utah-based employer. And I guess it goes without saying, the lawful presence requirement is still in force. So just because you don't have to provide a social security number doesn't mean that we won't ask for documents to run a safe check. So unfortunately, this let me rephrase that. So the undocumented population in Utah still does not qualify for a professional license. We do have to run that safe check, and you'll be denied if it shows that you are, like, for example, if your visa has expired. Though the exciting news is that we anticipate that these rule changes will open up licensure to several groups, including asylum seekers. Those are those who have dependent visas, tourists, parolees, and I'm sure a few other types of student and exchange visas, and a small exception who don't have a social security number. And then also future immigrants who are outside of the US. I'm excited because I've worked with several people who have faced this. For example, someone whose husband was who is studying at a university in Utah, and so they're a dependent and don't have work authorization, but they're trying to apply for a professional immigrant visa because they are highly trained professional. And so obtaining licensure is an important step for them in applying for their visa. I have also worked with several asylum seekers and others who are interested in changing their status. I've worked with several nurses from Canada who it helps them in obtaining their TN visa and in getting a job if they can show that they're already qualified and licensed in Utah rather than having to arrive here and then starting the licensure process and not being able to start work right away. So we're very hopeful that these groups will have quicker access to starting their employment and to beginning their professional careers. Lastly, this rule has not taken effect yet. We have written it internally. It still has to go through a period of public comment. So if you read the Utah State Bulletin where rules are posted, you'll be able to see all the updates as it goes through that process. But we anticipate that the effective date will be shortly before or after the new year. And with that, I invite you, if you have questions, to email me at alexanderbybee@utah.gov. If you work with the community and or just know somebody who is interested in applying for a professional license, please refer them to our team's email, which is doppelglobal@utah.gov. We can answer their questions if they're looking for information about their profession specifically. Refer them to our website, which is doppel.utah.gov. We have an entire section for internationally trained applicants and also a contact form where they can fill out all the details about their credentials so that when we do start communicating with them, we already have the information we need about their studies and their work experience. And then if we want to take questions now on this subject, we can, or I don't know if we're saving it for the end. Either way, I guess I turn the time back over.
Thanks, Alexander. I think this is a really important administrative change that even further helps to reduce barriers, especially for the different circumstances that you had mentioned before. To at least start the process is an important kind of component to knowing if you're even eligible to do so, and it could have implications for other visa pathways that people are exploring and able to put their education and credentials back to use. So thanks. Let's open it up for questions to see if anybody has questions, comments. It can be more general kind of professional licensing questions as well as it relates to foreign credentials. I know there's a few new folks on here, but we'd be happy to take those. You can raise your hand and we can unmute you, or feel free to ask your question in the chat. There's one in the chat that says, or in the Q&A, is there a plan for certain licenses to remove the lawful requirement, such as a hairdresser or electrician? So does that question make sense? So will there ever be licenses that don't require someone to be lawfully present?
So it's not something we would be able to change without going to the legislature. So for the foreseeable future, a save check will be needed for anyone who doesn't have that real ID.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Would you mind summarizing the legislature when that came in? For those who just joined? There's two pieces, and maybe Alex, you can just real quick touch on those. And then the Department of Professional Licensing has a FAQ on their website that's very helpful as well. I'll pull it up while you're talking, Alex.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, the state of Utah passed some laws that helped people who are applying for a professional license from another state. And so when you're looking at a license, we have these maps that say, here's a map of the US. If your state is in green, that means we don't need to see your transcripts and your exam scores. All we need to see is your license, because we recognize that the requirements and scope of practice were very similar. And then the year after that, the wording is different, but it's kind of the same goal. We expanded to not just other states, but other countries. So we have more authority to evaluate someone's credentials, their scope of practice, their requirements for licensure in their country. The law didn't apply to all professional licenses. And we kind of talk about that in that FAQ that Natalie mentioned. So if you want to find out if it affected your profession, you could go there or email me. And then the year after that, this most recent year, the same wording about considering other countries' licenses, it expanded to not just professional licenses at DOPL, but also in other agencies, Department of Health and Agriculture and Transportation. And so I don't get to work with those licenses, but there's another member of the task force named Jessler who is kind of a point of contact for that. So that applies to licenses, including educators' licenses and paramedics, and I think CDLs as well, and a few others. So research has just begun about how we can be helping immigrants return to those professions as well.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, how many total professions does DOPL license?
You know, I don't know the exact number. It's certainly over 100. I think it's something like there are 60 professions, and then within those professions, there's license types. So for example, there's nursing, but then there's also like 4 different types of nurse licenses, LPN, RN, APRN. So license types is like 160, I think. Yeah. So it's quite a few. It's a big lift to, do the research in order to open up these pathways to immigrants, but it's also very exciting. And we've seen a great response from the community, a lot of interest.
Yeah, and I think that all that to illustrate that it takes time to get through all of the different professions and the licenses associated with it. And in the interim, while that work is happening with the Department of Commerce and the great team that they have there, we're trying to work together to identify how we can bridge some of those professionals with industry and business. And so the Global Talent Pathway event on manufacturing is exactly intended to do that. The Department of Commerce, Alexander and his team and his counterpart, Jessler Molina, will be there to talk about engineering pathways and similar professions, coupled with some of the businesses who would be interested in hiring from that pool. Some professions don't require a license. They can come in as an engineering tech or other types of professions. We really want to maximize people's international education and their professional experience through licensing, but other pathways as well, where that's appropriate. So thank you, Alexander. They're an incredible resource. Please feel free to reach out to them. I posted the link to their page in the chat. There's a lot of information on the frequently asked questions and just on the website in general, but they're always happy to chat with folks as well. So great, thanks. Okay, so next we're going to turn it over to, before we do that, were there any last questions for Alexander for regarding professional licensing or the new rule? Feel free if something comes up to post that and we'll see if we can circle back to it. Okay, Antonella, now it's your turn. Antonella is one of the newest members to our teams here at Business Services in the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and is doing some incredible work around the Utah Small Business Credit Initiative. So we're going to hand the time over to her to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Natalie, and good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for the invitation to address you today. This is a very exciting program, at least for me, because I know the impact that access to capital can have in underserved communities. We are the Utah Small Business Credit Initiative, USBCI for short. And where did this start? Well, the American Rescue Plan, otherwise known as ARPA, that was in 2021, came out with the State Small Business Credit Initiative. So states across the country can apply for this funding from the federal government. And this program is known as the SSBCI. So what this program does is that it helps states support small businesses and startups. And but these are businesses or entrepreneurs that need help to access it. So what they have to do sometimes is that they tap into their own home equity, or they actually take out personal loans, credit cards, what have you, or very predatory lenders. So what we do as SSBCI recipients is that we go ahead and receive those funds so that we can work with lenders that apply through our program to be preferred providers, if you would, to use medical terms. And so what we do is that we work through them so that they can pretty much lend to a pool of individuals that they could otherwise not be able to. Now, the underwriting criteria is those lenders, the state or us at USBCI do not restrict their underwriting practices. That's not what we're here for. But we are encouraging these lenders to work with communities that are otherwise underserved. So I want to make something super clear because it tends to be confusing. I've received calls from the public where they're asking for a grant. The SSBCI program from the federal government is not a grant program. It is an economic stimulus program that uses federal dollars so that we can match it with private funds. And so that way we're able to say, well, because our funds were able to help minimize the risk to those lenders, now they can be a little more flexible with their underwriting criteria. So our aim really is to increase access to capital and promote entrepreneurship, especially in traditionally underserved communities post-pandemic. The US Treasury is who funds us. And the guidelines they put forth, they pretty much said that they want very small businesses, and they want businesses that have fewer than 10 and no more than 499 employees, and small businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, which the acronym for that is SETI, and so they can receive critical resources so they can grow and thrive. So again, we received $69 million from the federal government, and it runs from 2023 to 2030. That means in lending, this is not very much, but it is enough for us to be able to use that money so we can leverage other lenders' ability to lend. I will address questions once we finish the presentation, and keep the questions coming because I'm happy to answer. Now, we have two lending products, or two programs, if you would, within USBCI, and we want to collaborate with community partners that wish to help us promote the program among communities they serve. And, we want to at least, and we are asked actually from Treasury, that at least 30% of our funds are used to lend to businesses that are owned by SETI individuals. So we want to make sure that that money goes to truly individuals that otherwise wouldn't qualify. Next slide, please. So how does it work? Well, the state, which the big UT there, gives money to, or allocates an amount of money to a lender, and that is now participating in the program. And so that lender works directly with the business owner or the entrepreneur. So they use like I said, they use their own underwriting criteria. Some lenders are more flexible than others. So I wanted to make that very clear. Another thing too with our program is that we are not an SBA. This is not an SBA program, not for a long shot. If the person does not qualify for the SBA, they may be able to qualify for our program. So, so there's a big difference there. And if the individual is receiving a loan through the SBA, they wouldn't necessarily qualify through us because this program is for those who do not have that access. An example that I can give you would be somebody with DACA who has a great credit profile and social security number and what have you, and authority to, well, permission to work in the United States. And they do not qualify for small, for the SBA, so Small Business Administration lending. So I want to make sure that we understand that these are separate programs. And again, we're funded through Treasury. Next slide, please. So the program in and of itself, what it does is that it provides lenders with loss protection. And what it does, actually, if you see, Capital Access Program is one of our programs. And the target loan size for this is below $250,000. So this provides lenders with loss protection, which is important because many times they view certain people more of a higher credit risk. And this helps them fund projects, again, that they would normally wouldn't fund. This is the most accessible program that we have here at USBCI. And what's interesting about this program is that it does lend funds to startups. And it does use market rates, but the terms are flexible. And so you'd work with an organization that's either a CDFI, a community development financial institution, or a bank or a credit union in order to be able to, that participates with the program in order to apply for those funds. So this is the Capital Access Program. We call it CAP for short. Next. The loan participation program now, the target size of this loan is usually higher than $250,000. It can purchase up the loan. What we do is with a bank or credit union or people that make loans, we purchase up to half, up to, and that, as you can see, is in a different color because people here that we purchase half of a small business loan from a lender. It's up to, and then there's a limit, and the limit is up to $1 million. So the most that shall we say, a business can get on our side under this program will be up to $1 million. So the state-owned portion of the loan is assigned a very low interest rate. And what that does is that it creates a blended interest rate that is a lot lower for their loan. So there's a lot of demand from lenders wanting to participate in this program. And again, this is for businesses that are looking to grow. They are reach a certain stage, but they need an infusion of capital in order for them to be able to thrive. Next, please. So this is the worst graphic that we can come up with. And just so that you know, this presentation will be changing so that it can be easier to understand. So the Capital Access Program, the individuals pretty much can qualify for a loan that it is much easier parameters for, in fact, it's easier for them to get a loan than if they go through a traditional bank. Some do not require ITINs. I mean, some do not care if it's a social or an ITIN. They're doing the underwriting. Our program pretty simply provides the lender the funds. And it would be under what the lender wants to do in terms of eligibility, within, of course, the parameters of the federal government. The other one is that loan participation, as I spoke about, and this is pretty much for existing businesses that are looking to grow, and like I said previously, and it is a blended interest rate. Next slide, please. So who can apply? Well, clearly the program is statewide, okay? So small businesses, and this is something that a lot of financial institutions do not do. They don't really like to lend to nonprofits, but under this program, they can. The eligible loans should be used for a business purpose, and that could be startup cost, working capital, equipment, inventory, services, these kinds of things. I pretty much can go into what else is not covered, but passive real estate, you're going to flip a house, that doesn't count. If you're going to open a casino, then probably not. Among other things like marijuana dispensaries, they don't qualify under this, among others. But if you want to know, just feel free to contact us. We'll be able to list everything that we have. And again, just because these are the eligibility requirements, this is not going to guarantee approval, because again, for our program, that's going to be up to the lender to actually forward the loans to us for funding. Next, please. So our program requirements is that we really want to know what your plan is, that you know your market, what the intended use is. We want to see some clear financial projections. Tax returns, of course, if you have them for the business. Collateral, in some cases, that's going to be something that may be asked. Credit score, that's going to be the criteria left to the lender. And of course, we're going to provide a USBCI application packet for the relevant program. So is the program open? Not yet. The program will be opening in a few weeks. So how can you keep yourself informed as to when we're going to be, excuse me, when we're going to be opening would be if you actually subscribe to our program, and I can post the link if I can find the little chat thing. Give me a second so that y'all can go ahead and, there we go. Let's see. I don't think I can, it's not letting me answer, so.
I'll find it for you, Antonella, and I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome. So it's pretty much you will be subscribing, and we will make that announcement through there or through our Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity website. We want to make sure that people know. And for those of you that are working with underserved communities, we want to get that money out there. Because one thing that we know is that once we open the doors to this, the money will probably go fast.
So I posted in the chat the general office newsletter, and then there's a program newsletter for each one. So you would look for the Utah Small Business Credit Initiative newsletter. And then of course you can subscribe to any of the others as well. But Antonella, thanks for noting that the money will go fast. So thank you. This is why we're trying to inform everybody now, because it's opening pretty soon in the coming weeks.
Yes, and also I see some questions that says individuals on DACA, asylum seekers or refugees do not qualify to be lended funds through the system, or do they? What are the lawfully present requirements? I think that was probably to the previous presentation, but if you're asking for lending for us, you know, we're not you know, immigration, and it would be the criteria left to the financial institution you choose. Some do lend to people with asylum, with DACA, or with ITIN. So others do not. So you need to make sure that before they pull credit or what have you, that you see what their lending requirements are. That's left to the financial institution. There's nothing that says that they can or cannot lend to the list that Fernando Morales just posted. And then I see Erlene Vendretti and says, if you are just starting and has no collateral, would your application be considered? Once again, that is up to the financial institution and the type of loan that you are looking for. They will lend to startups under the CAP program. They may have other requirements for you in order for you to be able to qualify under them. So we're going to be posting the names of the institutions participating, and we are hoping to make that announcement in about a couple of weeks. So stay tuned. If you ask me who is, I cannot really answer until they sign the contract, but we have several of them that we're excited to announce. And they were really excited to be able to expand their lending criteria to be able to lend to those who they haven't been able to do so before.
Yeah. And some of them who are excited to lend to immigrant communities specifically. So, so more to come. We're all waiting with bated breath to know who that is. But again, staying in touch with us is really important. There's also a couple other questions. Earlier, your question on how is this program different than the SBA funding options? I think we had Antonella mentioned that. She talked about this funding is from Department of Treasury. There's different criteria associated with that. Can the loan be for the small business that employs underprivileged community members like refugees?
Okay, so the loan so the loan is for a small business that could be minority owned, it can be veteran owned, it can be woman, like I said, woman owned, minority owned, veteran owned business, and or live in a CDF5 or not live, but they're located inside a CDFI zip code. And so for those things, the banking entity or whoever you're using to finance this will have to check and see if that indeed is that. But if you fit the criteria of being a small business and you're under those 500 employees and you still qualify under those guidelines, ethnicity or circumstances are not going to really matter. It's the employee size, and also it's also revenue based, but and for the most part, there's quite a few people that will be able to borrow under this program. What the Treasury is asking of us is that we at least lend 29% of the money to what we call SETI entrepreneurs.
Great, thank you, Antonella. Are there any other questions for Antonella before we move on? Awesome news. Thank you. Yes, thank you. This is all very exciting. Switching back to our presentation here, Claudia is going to pull it up. We did highlight some additional small business resources, recognizing that people are in different stages in their business, and so not everyone may qualify for the funding that's available from these lenders through the USBCI program. The Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity has a website with quite a few resources that you can sort that are small businesses. There's a directory with filters that identify specific resources through specialty, industry, or community. So for example, multicultural business owners, women-owned businesses, LGBTQ plus business owners, those different categories, and then based on whatever industry or specialty you would like assistance with. In order to qualify for loans or to go to the banks themselves, you will need to get your accounting and bookkeeping in order and be able to prove financials. So engaging with an accounting resource may be of interest to do now for your businesses ahead of time. There's also information on government contracts, business registration with the Department of Commerce, so much information that's available on there. So please, the links are in there. We'll share it in the follow-up, but really good resources that we're working on trying to make them more accessible in kind of a one-stop shop, if you will, to help ensure that people know where to get assistance with their business when they need it. And then on the next slide, as part of our podcast series, we just did a podcast with the SWAZO Business Center on helping Utah's minority-owned businesses succeed. Many of us are familiar with the SWAZO Center, but they really increased their footprint across the state from northern Utah down to southern Utah. So I'd encourage you to listen to that podcast and get some insight into some additional business resources that may be available and how they've expanded their footprint from not just serving a Salt Lake County, Salt Lake City demographic, but really around the state, providing really good resources there. Okay. So questions and discussion. We wanted to open it up to see if there's any other questions. Also, just to get any feedback on the task force, whether these topics are useful, relevant for you, and then we'll talk about what our next New Americans Task Force meeting will be about. So any thoughts, questions, or things that you'd like to highlight? Thank you, Maida. I appreciate your comments. These are great initiatives. We're really pleased to be able to share this good work that's happening within the state, within our communities with you all too. Well, feel free to continue with the chat. Alex, this is a question about licensing doctors, foreign or internationally trained doctors, from Maida Gomez. Do you want to give any updates on where we're at with that, and if you're comfortable doing it in Spanish, and if not, then you can say it in English, or and we can translate for you.
Sure. Was it in the chat, the specific question, or is it just?
It's in the chat. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Entonces, para las personas que no han escuchado, abrimos un poquito las vías o maneras de aplicar para la licencia de enfermera. Entonces, en otras palabras, estamos considerando personas que fueron médicos en sus países para que puedan aplicar para ser enfermeras. Nuestro equipo de especialistas están trabajando para clarificar qué tiene que demostrar, o sea, la licencia, la educación y qué otras cosas tienen que mostrar para poder calificar para tomar el examen que se llama NCLEX, NCLEX, es el examen como estándar para todas las enfermeras y solamente se ofrece en inglés. Entonces no tengo las pautas específicas porque todavía estamos haciendo una investigación de que tiene que mostrar un médico internacional, pero sí es posible. Estamos intentando clarificar los requisitos para este caso. Y si tienen preguntas sobre eso, deben contactarme con el correo que está en mi PowerPoint, en mi presentación.
Bueno, gracias, Alexander. And if you have questions, please, there's a couple others that were in the chat, but Alexander's a great resource. He was just highlighting what some of the pathways that they're considering around medical professionals and the nursing or alternative pathways like nursing for medical professionals as well. Of course, their resource can do one-on-one conversations or can speak to your associations or groups and give you a little bit more information about that. One more question here that is that says, I joined the meeting late. I'm sorry, is there a change in policy to help certain dependents of certain class of lawfully present foreign workers obtain employment authorization? That would be a federal designation that would need to happen, or an act of Congress actually to change that. However, Alexander was sharing that people with people who are dependents of another individual could begin the credential evaluation or the process around their foreign credentials that may be able to assist with other with an alternative visa pathway for with those with extraordinary abilities or the variety of other types of visas that may be available for those who are dependents of certain visa holders as well. So no, unfortunately, that's not an purview or an area that the state has much influence on, but I think Alexander's presentation is kind of a testament, and Antonella's as well, is like where we're trying to identify some of the pathways that exist for people in a variety of circumstances in their visa journey or as immigrants who have come through a variety of pathways as well. So very cognizant of that. We're looking at different policies that we can help to facilitate that. But at the end of the day, much of this is federal policy that would require some additional reforms to address issues like the dependence of certain visa holders too. Okay. Any other final thoughts or questions before we wrap up? Yes, we will definitely share the PowerPoint presentation. We post a recording of this webinar on our website. Claudia on our team is really great about sharing the PowerPoint and any resources that were highlighted in the presentation, as well as follow up to invitations to the event. So you'll get all of that via email within the next few days following this webinar. Okay, final slide. We have our next New Americans Task Force meeting scheduled for December 19th. The topic is around the business imperative for language resources. We have some different partners who are going to be coming to talk about different digital-based vocational ESL programs that are being used in Utah by private employers, by refugee services, and then other states are using this more widely as well. So some really great research that they've done on the benefits of utilizing vocational ESL programs in the workforce and some of the advantages to doing that and how businesses can offset the costs to do that as well. And we'll also have a group called One Meta join us to talk a little bit about their services for AI translation that has been effective in helping to improve customer experience for businesses, as well as with some workforce and community engagement efforts as well. So there's that. Of course, the contact information for Z with the Center of Economic Opportunity and Belonging is here, as well as my information. Please don't hesitate to reach out anytime if you have ideas for presentations or things that we should be lifting up. This is the purpose of the task force, to be as informative and useful to you all. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And with that, we're ending just right at the top of the hour. Sometimes we schedule these for a little bit longer in the event that we have additional presenters or have a lot of questions coming in. So we'll go ahead and wrap up a little bit early. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and stay in touch, and we hope to see you all soon.